Welcome, everyone, to Neurotransformations, your home for healing, transformations, and badass awakenings. My name's Brody Miller, and I am your grateful host. Tonight, I am super honored to be here with Markus Schreyer. Markus is a well-renowned coach who specializes in neuro-based fitness, focusing on neuroscience, nutrition, and training. He's on an absolute mission to decode human health and sports performance and is the leader of the Neurotraining Institute in beautiful Miami, Florida. I ran into Markus's content in June of this year, and I've been super fascinated ever since in what he does with brain training and exercises. Anyhow, Markus, thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy schedule with us today. How are you doing tonight?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, I'm doing great. Really excited for our talk today.
Yeah, and I can't wait to talk about some neuroscience, which honestly is one of my favorite topics. So I wanted to just start out with your story and what was going on in your mind. How did you originally get allocated to the neurohealth field? Was it like an aha moment that you had, or how did you get involved with neuroscience?
Yeah, I mean, it's a couple of years back, I think like 6 or 7 years by now. I mean, I was always super fascinated about, human health and performance. I was always an athlete, so I was always, like really interested in, okay, how can I decode my own performance? Like how can I, make myself a better athlete? How can I get stronger? How can I, feel better? All of these things. So that was always sort of like my thing. I tried out a lot of different sports. I grew up with playing soccer. Obviously, I'm from Germany. We're a big soccer nation. Unfortunately, this year in the World Cup, it wasn't our World Cup. So I was actually watching some highlights of 2014 just to get in a better mood when we actually won the whole thing. But yeah, I got into soccer. Then I switched to basketball. I always wanted to, become a professional athlete. By the time I sort of like decided for a sport, I think it was a little bit too late for me. And I also had like some bad injuries to my knees. So I just decided to, like become a coach and like help people with their wildest dreams and like really helping them unlock their performance. And I got deeply involved in, first of all, like nutrition and training. So I learned everything on planet Earth about, nutrition, hormone health, gut health, then, biomechanics, strength training, hypertrophy, muscle building, fat loss, all of these things. And for me, because you asked me if it was an aha moment, and I actually thought about this, and actually I remember I was in the car listening to a audiobook called Why Isn't My Brain Working from the T's Karazian. And that was sort of like the first time when I got into the field of brain health and like, brain science, neuroscience. And I heard about the different lobes, I heard about the different areas of the brain. And I just got super fascinated by that. I don't know why, but I just felt like something in my gut was telling me, hey, you should dive deeper into that topic. And, like I just sort of like, I was like a vacuum cleaner, just like getting all the information in, like soaking up everything that I could learn. And that's how I basically ended up doing all the neuro stuff that I do today, as well as the other things. Because, what neuroscience has helped me was actually just like answer a lot of the questions that I always had. For example, like when it comes to mobility, I always thought, okay, if I want to help someone be more flexible or move better, okay, they need to stretch, they need to do like, hours of mobility training, all of these things that, still a lot of people preach today. And, for some people, this might be true, but for my clients, for my athletes, this stuff just never really worked. I got them like all of these, like the homework, the stretching, all of these things, and it never like really worked. And that's when I really understood, okay, mobility, flexibility, movement is not depending on how long or short a muscle is, but it's actually depending on how well the nervous system controls muscle tone. So like how tense is the muscle? What's the synergy between flexors and extensors? And then I learned, more advanced strategies about, like using different cranial nerves and like using specific eye exercises, whatever it is, to just like manipulate muscle tone. And that's when sort of like my eyes started to open, and I was like, wow, this stuff is really amazing. And yeah, like I said, I just got into this just because I was really intrigued by it and fascinated by it. And still to this day, I mean, neuroscience is just so fascinating. I mean, if you just look at the studies on PubMed right now, like the last 20 years, how many studies have been done in the field of neuroscience, it is absolutely insane. That's why also, like a lot of the old beliefs that we still have around the brain, or like even like health, performance, whatever it is, like a lot of the things we really have to question. Because if you look at a lot of the studies now that are done on the brain, like a lot of these new findings, they just like I said, they just question a lot of the old beliefs that we have. And
Right.
I studied like something like sports science called fitness and health management in Germany. And even the things that we learned there, I feel like so many things are just so outdated that it's just really hard to keep up with that. And that's why, still to this day, I dedicate almost, I would say, at least 3 hours a day of just like, going to PubMed and just like studying and just learning about the brain, because there's always new things, like you start with one thing and then there's another door that opens up and you're like, oh shit, I have not heard about that. So I need to get into that topic, like it's a never ending story. But that's what makes it so fascinating, because it always, I feel like as coaches or like as therapists or like as someone that truly helps people,
Mhm.
one of the things that makes our job so fascinating or so interesting is always learning new things. And that's how you can actually keep up your passion for something. Because like if you feel like you know everything, then it just becomes boring at a time, because you're like, oh, I've seen that. But like if you really always learn new things, that's when it really stays interesting, and that's how you can always expand your knowledge and like help more people to max out their performance or health or whatever the goal is. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. When you're learning, that is synaptic plasticity in motion. It's the most beautiful thing when you learn new information that encodes the neural circuitry together. And it's such it is being a human. It's one of the most advantageous parts of being a human, is being able to learn new information so quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like when you look at dopamine, it's oftentimes like dopamine always gets actually like is a misunderstood neurotransmitter. And I've talked about that too. Like a lot of people think you produce dopamine when you've accomplished a task. Okay, I've done this, so now I'm producing dopamine. But it's more actually the strive for something, or like the path to something, that's like where you actually produce most dopamine,
Right.
which
The
I think it's really
motivation.
exactly. So like just being on the right path makes you feel good. And that's why like just learning every day and like learning new things, I think is so fascinating. Yeah.
Absolutely. I wanted to sidetrack a little bit and get into the neural circuitry of, they estimate that around 50% of our neural real estate is dedicated to vision. And vision, of course, humans were very visual creatures. And I actually suffered an damage to my retina, as I told you, from
Mhm.
a paintball accident that occurred about 5 years ago. And I've had trouble getting the same sensory information into my eye, but I found doing certain exercises, like putting the patch on my eye, it's like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? If so, I put the patch over my good eye and try to use my eye and the muscles and the oculomotor muscles and things of that nature. So I just wanted to ask you, you have a lot of content that's focused on visual processing in particular. So I wanted to ask you if you could explain to the audience why visual processing is such an important part to not only performance, but I believe everyday life for most people.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I mean, just the fact that about 40 to 50% of our brain is dedicated to vision just tells you the whole story. And at the same time, it's also our number one sensory information system about our environment. You know, I always tell people, okay, go outside, close your eyes and try to, you know, get to where you want to go. And like so many people, they always think about, oh, I need to train my biceps, I need to train XYZ, but they never think about actually training their eyes, which I think is so fascinating and so interesting. And still, I mean, we're again talking about old beliefs. A lot of people still think that, okay, training the eyes is nothing that, you know, does anything, or like, oh, there's no research on that. If you look at the studies, the last 2 years alone, like if you actually just, let's talk about athletic performance. If you just type in PubMed, vision training, sports performance, the last 2 years, there is, I think, I don't know how many pages that you have to go through to all of the studies that have been done in the last 2 years. So there's so much evidence coming out that actually training the eyes is a thing and is very, very effective. Not only for sports performance, which I think is obvious. You know, I don't need the studies for that. I mean, it's nice to have the studies, but like it's just something that makes a lot of sense. If you think about sports performance, the better the eyes move, the faster the eyes move, the more accurate someone can see, the better someone's sports performance. But when we look at, you know, like everyday life as well, and things like emotions, even things like hormones, then it also gets really interesting. Because if you look at, for example, saccadic eye movements, so like moving the eyes fast from left to right, there's also been studies done that even, I think, like 10 minutes of saccadic eye training a day, vision training a day, can actually help with symptoms of depression, symptoms of, you know, things like mood disorders, compulsive behavior, and all of these things. And that's just something that tells me, hey, there's so much more to vision than we think it is, and still to this day. And I think it's not going to change in the next 5 to 10 years. I mean, more and more is coming out, but it's, I think, one of the biggest underrated topics when we talk about health and performance in general. And, you know, it's also so fascinating because literally the eyes are a visible part of the brain. If you look at the anatomy of the eyes via the optic nerve are like directly connected with the brain. And it's actually the visible part of the brain. And that's why when I work with clients, one of the things that I'm really interested in is, okay, how well are the eyes moving? How well are the eyes able to focus on a target? How well are the eyes at, you know, things like convergence, divergence, all of these things, because it's almost like a window to someone's brain function. Depending on how well the eyes are moving or like how specific certain eye movements work, can tell me a lot about someone's brain function. And from there on, I can, you know, like just draw the lines to the different brain areas and be like, okay, I need to work on that specific brain area. We need to work on this specific cranial nerve to just, you know, really make sure we're optimizing someone's performance or like someone's health.
That's so fascinating and brilliant. I was taking this course by Z Health Performance, and it was so bizarre because he would have me moving my arm up. I had a shoulder injury at the time. And when I was moving my arm up, he said, okay, next you're going to look on the opposite side of where you normally look, and you're going to look in a specific way down. And when I did the same exercise, it was able to get my shoulder higher. And I said, whoa, this is, our body and brain are so interconnected with one another that how is that even possible? But when you think about how interconnected our brain is to our nervous system, to all of the other organs and functions of our body, it makes sense, because there, you know, when you strengthen neural connections in certain areas, you lose it if you don't use it. And that was the case with me with communication, almost in so many aspects of my life. But I do want to learn more about the visual system in the future, especially from some of the really cool things that you've been telling me. So I understand that many people are suffering from myopia these days due to the amount of times that we're spending on screens. So that makes me think that because we're hyper focused on looking at these screens, we're training our eyes to look, we're getting excess stimulus at any given times. So what would you recommend to listeners and people? What could you recommend for them to do to not feel the negative effects of myopia, which is nearsightedness?
Yeah, I mean, there is also been excellent research on that topic the last 2 or 3 years. I mean, a lot of the really nice things have come out the last 2 or 3 years, which I think is so cool when we talk about neuroscience. When it comes to myopia, I think the first thing that people need to understand is a lot of myopia is actually lifestyle related. And there has been an excellent study. I don't really remember the year, but I remember how this study has been done. I think it was around like 700 students. And they just made these students go outside for, I think it was 11 hours a week. So it was about like 2 hours a day approximately. And they just looked at myopia. They looked at the symptoms. They looked at, you know, like how is the eyesight, and they were able to find out that no matter what they did outside, even if it was reading a book or, you know, probably even looking at their phone, it actually significantly improved their eyesight.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's one of the first things that I tell people, to spend as much time outside as possible. My wife hates me for that, because I literally take my laptop anywhere that I can go. Like, we live right on the beach here, so like sometimes I just take my laptop and work from the beach.
Cool.
But I just take my health and, you know, everything related to human performance, I take it very serious. And like I try to, you know, do little things that, you know, don't take me a lot of effort, and I just try to implement them, you know. And I just really I notice so much, even when it comes to my sleep. So I always track my sleep with my Aura ring. I can notice such significant changes as well when it comes to sleep and, like, you know, just like personal health. Versus, for example, like we just had a hurricane here in Florida a couple of months back, like 2 months back, and like I was not really able to go out at all.
Right.
And I could just see all my numbers drop, and like also see how I feel. So, you know, that's probably one of the first things that I can recommend when we're talking about myopia, or like visual acuity. The second thing is there's also been great studies actually on red light therapy when it comes to myopia. So I think it was 2 minutes a day before noon. So like in the early parts of the day, like getting red light exposure directly in the eye. And I mean, all of these things, always please consult with your doctor,
Right.
consult with your physician. But that was something that also was able to significantly decrease, you know, myopia, and like improve eyesight. And then also just like training the eyes is something that people can do, like some of the visual exercises that are out there. Although I would say a lot of these, again, are very individual and need to be dressed individually, because the more you understand about the visual system, the more you understand that some eye exercises for some individuals are maybe not the right fit. So actually, for example, I had a client this year in Germany, and her goal was also to improve like eyesight. And before she worked with me, she got like a program on the internet that, like, you know, said to improve eyesight. She
Right.
didn't really see great improvements from it. And I was actually able to test out, based on her nervous system response, how she reacts to the different eye exercises. And we were actually able to find out that some of the drills that she did were not the right fit for her particular nervous system. And that is just something that I always tell people when we're talking about training the brain. Since the brain is so individual, it is really hard or almost impossible to say, okay, here are the 5 best brain exercises that you can do, because everyone is so different. I know a lot of people, you know, like I get tons of messages every single day on Instagram of people telling me, oh, I had TBI, car accident, stroke. What is an exercise that I can do? And I'm like, I don't know. It needs to be dressed individual. Like, it's just something that has to be, I mean, there is some things like, you know, coordinative exercises, things like that, breathing, that probably won't have a negative response. But whenever we're talking about the real cool stuff, like the visual stuff, the vestibular stuff, all of these things, it needs to be addressed really individual and like highly also careful at times. You know, that's why I always recommend people, whenever they want to experiment with vision exercises or vestibular exercises, to actually do them with guidance and not just like on their own. Because I literally had people, you know, fall over from doing some vestibular exercises that were not meant for them. And, you know, but just in general, you can say, yes, you can train the eyes as well. It needs, you know, some level of discipline and like obviously some time to improve it. But like I said, there's a lot of great evidence now pointing towards the fact that also training the eyes with like specific eye exercises can be of great help for myopia.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll probably ask you later about what kind of techniques and things you use upon people, especially from how you, you assess their eyes' strength and things over Zoom and over online. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about performance in the brain, how the brain really isn't meant to multitask, which a lot of people don't understand. That we can't, if you're focusing on 2 things at once, you're going to get good on focusing on 2 things at once. And it's really, our brain was not designed to do that. And you're just going to make things worse. But I wanted to ask you how you prioritize focus and prioritize concentration in such a distracted and focused world we're living in.
Yes, you definitely need an action plan for that in 2022 or like now 2023.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, focus and multitasking is a big thing. Like a lot of people nowadays have symptoms of, you know, ADHD. And honestly speaking, I always tell anybody, like, it's no wonder with the times that we're living in, with all of these distractions that we're bombarded with, notifications, Instagram, TikTok, which is the worst, you know, like all of these things. Like I literally, like I just started TikTok. I never actually have been on TikTok.
Yeah.
And I just honestly, I just go on there, I post my stuff and I leave, because I just spend like 2 minutes there and I get a headache. Like it's literally so much information. And when you actually have trained your brain to be quote unquote dopamine sensitive, which luckily I have trained my brain to do it. It's really hard, but it's really crazy for, you know, like our brain to like process all of that information. And I mean, some of the things that I really like to do when it comes to focus is I like to set a timer for everything that I do when it comes to work. So for example, whenever I get into my research that I, you know, try to get in every single day, that's at least like 2, 3, 4 hours. I literally set a timer of sometimes 20 minutes, sometimes 30 minutes, sometimes 40 minutes, depending on how well I feel or like how well focused I feel. And I just basically work with I think it's called the Parmadod. I forgot the name. I think it's a specific method that you can use, Pomodoro method.
A Pomodoro, yeah.
Pomodoro, I think it's well known now at this time. So I just like set a timer, 20 minutes, then 5 minutes. I allow myself to do whatever I can do. I can, check my phone, scroll through Instagram, drink a coffee, whatever it is, and then I go back to work. And I think that's one of the most important things to really do. Like, just whenever you're focused on work, just like create blocks of time. And that's how you can actually get a lot of stuff done in a very little amount of time. Because oftentimes, and I know also, I'm not perfect. So like I've had days where I don't do this and I'm like, holy, like it's already 8 p.m. What did I do all day? And that's, where you kind of like understand, okay, yeah, you probably just spent, I don't know, 3 hours on your phone, 2 hours doing, random things that don't do anything. And yeah, I think that's one of the first things. Then the second thing, obviously, nutrition is a big thing whenever we talk about focus. I mean, just like, getting the neurotransmitters right and like basically just allowing your brain to be focused. I personally myself had some history with some severe gut issues. So I can write a book about how it feels to actually have brain fog at times. I had like a gut infection and actually like a parasite infection a couple of years back, which was definitely not fun to deal with. And that's also something that I always address with every single one of my clients, because you can do all of the eye exercises in the world whenever you have like a metabolic problem or sort of like, just like an internal problem. And I mean, it's again, it's interoception. It's the way your brain feels about itself. It's basically the information that your brain receives from your own body that becomes really important as well. And, it's so fascinating. There's, again, more and more research coming out about, the gut microbiome, about the gut-brain axis and all of these things, and like how it's literally directly correlated to how well our brain is functioning. So yeah, that's just something that I also address whenever we talk about focus. And I mean, there's, again, so many different hacks that you can use to increase focus, but I would say like these are the two primary things that anyone can do, just like really like be structured and like basically just use the flight mode function on your phone. I think that's one of the most the best functions actually on your phone, putting your phone into flight mode and not getting distracted from any notifications and things like that. And then just like really addressing nutrition and also using the right brain exercises to enhance your focus.
Awesome, dude. What were some of the nutritional aspects that really changed your relationship with your gut microbiome?
I mean, at that time, I actually experimented with low carb and keto at that time. I mean, I'm right now, I'm not a fan of, or like, I'm not in any nutritional camp, or I don't belong to any nutritional religion, because I feel like nowadays it literally like becomes a nutrition and religion that you sort of like convert to, which is horrible. But at that time I actually did that, had great results with it. I used a lot of different supplemental techniques or like strategies. So, there's different things that I used. I used black walnut extract, oil of oregano, just like a lot of different things on like more of like the herbal side. Whatever I did worked. And I, just really realized, okay, it was probably a mixture of stress and also eating out a lot. I feel like that's just like what really did it for me too. At that time, I just, started my business and I was just working nonstop and I was really, really stressed. My sleep wasn't the best. So just like a lot of the lifestyle remedies as well play into that. But yeah, I mean, just, also right now, what we know about about the gut microbiome is also so fascinating, because the more we understand about it, the more we know that we don't know anything.
Yeah.
But just like when it comes to gut health, like eating a lot of fiber is something that the research clearly points towards is better. So I try to increase, always have like a high fiber intake.
Does it have
And
anything to do with probiotics or prebiotics? Because I hear a lot of contradictory stuff in the scientific literature between, oh, okay, well, the probiotics are only good a certain amount of time. There was a lot of confusing evidence about that.
it is. And like I said, it's still so, when you look at the research of gut microbiome, it's like literally in the early stages. So it's still so hard to say, okay, like, yeah, these are the 3 best things that you can take. I mean, personally, what I do is like I said, focus on fiber, and I focus on including prebiotic foods. I think these are the 2 things right now, looking at the evidence, that are pretty safe to say are the most efficient that you can do for your gut health. Just like, having high fiber intake, and then at the same time, including some prebiotic foods in your daily diet. So for example, like your kimchi, or kefir, or sauerkraut, like different things that sort of like just feed your gut microbiome. It needs to be addressed individually, because some people actually don't respond that well to prebiotic foods as well. I mean, it's very individual, but I would say for most people, these are the 2 things that you can do. And then obviously, just like not eating like a complete moron is, I think, also something that is really important, because you can eat all the prebiotic foods in the world. If you like eat out fast food, processed foods every single day, then that's again a big problem. But at the same time, it's really interesting that a lot of different other studies have now come out. For example, aerobic exercise is also something that now we can clearly say affects the gut microbiome in a positive way, which I think again is so fascinating, because it's some of these things on a lifestyle level that you can just change or include that can also play such a major role. And that's also like, whenever I look at supplements, that's sort of like how I view supplements. Supplements are just something that is an addition to something that people can take,
Right.
in order to like maybe improve the last 10-20%. But most of the good stuff, the stuff that really works, is more on like the lifestyle level, the training level, where you can really impact your health or impact your performance. So
Yeah, so well said. Supplementation is only a small aspect of the overall picture. That's why I like to look at things very holistically, in the sense like, okay, we have the way that you think, your mentality, your emotions,
big
that
time.
contributes to stress, but also you shouldn't be eating in McDonald's either. But a lot of people will just eat healthy. Why am I not feeling better? Why am I not getting better? Well, how are you dealing with your stress on a day-to-day basis? How are you feeling about yourself?
And also a lot of people, I feel like, are so scared of doing the right things. So like, I've worked with so many clients in the past that literally were so paranoid about eating, that I just told them, hey, go to McDonald's, have a Big Mac, because they're so scared of, oh my God, I'm so fragile. And that's just something that also a lot of people just really have to learn about themselves, about their brain, about their body. We're so resilient, actually. We're so resilient. And it's, again, what you said, like, it's also the story that you tell yourself. If you tell yourself you're fragile, if you tell yourself you're going to be unhealthy, probably going to happen. And one of the interesting things about my parasite infection that I had a couple of years ago was that it was exactly that time when I got so deeply involved with gut health and reading everything about parasites. So, I listened to all of these podcasts. They were also talking, oh my God, I did like whatever, like stool analysis on my client, and he had parasites. And 1 month later, I had parasites. So like, I think the mind is so powerful, the brain is so powerful that whatever we program it to believe or think about, it eventually will become reality. So it's crazy.
It
Yeah.
is. It's what you focus on seems to show up time and time again. The perfect example is the pink elephant. I said, tell you, don't think of the pink or purple elephant. And what immediately comes to your mind is the pink. Or for example, you're driving down the street and the car analogy that a lot of people talks about. Oh, I want a yellow Lamborghini, or not Lamborghini, but yellow Corolla, Toyota Corolla. And you start to see, those time and time again. But it's a funny thing that you said about your gut. I just wanted to transition into, because you're into high performance and stuff of that nature, what are like some really performance indicators or statistics that you deal with your high performance clients? Like, is it brain health? Is it more heart rate variability? Or what are some of the things that you look at when you're trying to improve your clients?
Yeah, I mean, it always depends on the goal of the client. I mean, I look a lot at movement because I feel like I work a lot with professional athletes and just like athletes in general. So movement becomes a great indicator of like how well someone's actually functioning.
Yeah.
Then obviously on the metabolic side of things like HRV, heart rate variability, sleep, recovery, obviously are also really important. But like I said, it's just always very individual, and it's so funny because I consider coaching almost like an art. So a lot of people always want to have these. So in my seminars, a lot of people, they ask me, okay, like what's the protocol that I can use? And I always tell them I don't really teach protocols, I only teach principles, because I feel like coaching is an art, and really understanding the body as a whole is almost like being an artist. So you use whatever you have to use with your clients. And it's the same, like when you look at, for example, Jimi Hendrix, who is one of the best guitar players of all time. I don't think at a certain point, or like at the end of his career, he was playing off of notes. He was just doing whatever he felt like doing when he was playing the guitar. And I feel like as a coach or as a therapist, the more knowledge you have, the more you sort of like use principles, and the more you read someone's problems better, whether that is through analyzing movement, whether that is through analyzing someone's limitations on the court, on the field, or also what maybe the athlete tells you. So for example, right now I work with a couple of professional soccer players, and one of them told me that his former training was all based around heavy lifting. And he just realized that heavy lifting wasn't getting the job done for him. So for him, obviously, doesn't really make a lot of sense to put him into like really heavy lifts in the gym, and like like just giving him like really heavy squats or deadlifts or whatever, but just really focusing on how can we optimize biomechanics as well, again, as brain health. How can we optimize someone's brain to like basically have better proprioception, have better movement control, and things of that nature. However, when we look at different other cases, like people that are super mobile, super flexible, but they lack strength, they might need exactly the other thing. So that's just when the art of coaching comes into play, where you sort of like learn to read your client and give the client exactly what he or she needs. And I think that's just something that comes a lot with experience. And having done this now for over 7 years, it's just something that grows with experience. In the beginning, obviously, you put every single one of your clients sort of like under the same, okay, assessment 1, assessment 2, assessment 3, and then, you know, just put them into the program. But now I'm just like, I really like to consider myself a problem solver. So whatever people have, I try to solve it with the tools that I have in my toolbox. And, you know, I think that's the best way to describe some of the tools that I use whenever we talk about performance and health optimization.
Yeah, for me personally, I'm not a medical doctor, and I don't want to be. I don't want to diagnose people, because I feel that when you diagnose people, and there is an aspect of where that is very important. However, when you diagnose people, it can limit them in a lot of ways. And when I was going through my brain trauma and my recovery, and when the doctor was telling me that, okay, he diagnosed me, this is what you've got, it felt very limited in a lot of aspects. And there's a lot of over prescribing and over use of certain medicines that they put me on. But overall, it's just trying to empower the other person to do what the brain and body, they're basically, the way I see them is they are self-regulating mechanisms. Like the brain and the body have the ability to heal itself, but you really have to foster that growth and that healing, and you have to do it in such an individual level that it's very important. And I'm so happy, man, that you came on, and I learned a lot. I really appreciate you doing this. I wanted to, right before we head out, just, what does like a typical day in the life look like for you? Because you're into performance. I'm always trying to improve my performance from a habitual and nutritional aspect. So what does a day in the life look like for you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, most of my days actually look the same. At least I try to make them look the same. I mean, the last couple of years have been a little bit wild because I've been traveling a lot. Like I said, I'm originally from Germany, been doing long distance with my girl, going back and forth to the States and like different parts of, you know, like the world. We've been in Colombia for a time and things like that. So it's I also know how it is to like have to have a schedule even when you're traveling. But now finally, as we're like, you know, settled down sort of like here in Florida, I, you know, some of the routines that I have, I mean, I'm an early bird, so I tend to wake up really early. That's sort of like the first thing that I always try to like strive for, because like I can't sleep longer than, I don't know, like 8 a.m. or something like that.
Yeah.
One of the first things that I do every single morning is I try to get as much sunlight as possible. Luckily, we're in Florida where the sun is almost shining all year long, which is amazing and a blessing at the same time. I have a very like strict morning routine that I incorporate every single day. I mean, a lot of people say you don't need all of that. I personally feel so much better. I'm such a routine type person. I just need it to feel to know that I start my day well, and like the way you start your day sort of like dictates the whole day in and of its own. And I get up. I usually have some form of meditation that I do every single morning. I tend to, you know, like differentiate between different meditations. Sometimes I focus a little bit more on my breathing, different breathing methods that I use, as well as some of the neuro exercises that I do. So I do my vision work, I do my exercises, vestibular drills, things of that right in the morning, get up. Then I usually hit the gym. And that's sort of like one thing that I've just really realized being very busy, that you just have to make time for yourself. So for example, for me, I usually don't start any of my appointments or work calls or meetings before 12 or 11ish, because like the first part of my day, I just try to really like dedicate for my health and like for myself. And that's also what I can really recommend every single person that is busy to do, because if you're not working, nothing else, whether that's your business or your relationship or your marriage, is not going to work. So like just really prioritizing some time for yourself, some time to work out, to get stronger, to educate yourself, I think is really important. And then usually my day starts, like I said, I operate mostly online. So like I, have usually like work calls with clients. I'm an educator for Neurotraining Institute. So like like I said, I study, I go to PubMed and like do my research and prepare a lot of the things. And as I told you before we started the podcast, I like to work outside. So sometimes I just take my laptop to the beach and just like work
Nothing
from
wrong with
there.
that.
And just like try to get as much sunlight exposure as possible. And I mean, from the nutritional standpoint, I have a very simple diet, honestly speaking. I like I said, I'm not in any camp. I focus, on just like a whole foods diet. I focus on, getting enough protein in. I focus on, doing some of the organ meat stuff as well. I mean,
Yeah,
now
I've
like there's a
again that
big,
I'm kind of mixed about it.
yeah, I mean it tastes like hell. I mean, there's a lot of talk right now about the Liver King, and I mean, he like just it was clear, like if you understand, like human biology, it was clear that this guy was on juice from the first second on. But I mean, some of the things that he talks about are actually pretty good. I mean, the liver is one of the healthiest foods.
It is.
But you're not gonna look like Liver King after eating liver. But that's just something, I mean, that anyone I think can do. And I mean, there's so many different things that I do, from like cold exposure to sauna to sun exposure to all of my neuro stuff that I do. That's so hard to think about all of the things that I do, but I mean, I'm very I'm very disciplined with my routines, and just like try to really be structured every single day, and just like have an action plan. I think that's the most important things, because literally you are your routines. And anyone that's out there struggling, whether that is with health or things like mental health problems, it usually comes down to what routines and what lifestyle are these people living. And a lot of the times, like you barely meet people that have a good lifestyle, take care of their own body, work out, that are depressed. I'm not saying like not gonna be not anyone, but like there's like a really low possibility of people like living a healthy life and like working out, taking care of themselves, spending time with their family, that are like struggling with health and some of the things that we just talked about. So yeah, I mean, that's basically my life. Just in a couple of words.
Hey, well, that love to hear it. Some really funny, cool stuff, man. I was really happy to get you on this interview. Where can people find you if they're looking for to reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have two Instagram accounts. The first one is Markus.Schreyer.performance, which I post a lot about different things, about nutrition. I post a lot about the brain. I post a lot about training as well. And then if you're primarily interested in the brain stuff, I have my separate page called Neurotraining Institute, where I also host seminars and offer courses for professionals to like get educated in that topic. So whichever one interests you the best, just follow me there. You can also follow me on both. One follower or more, it's also good. And yeah, that's where people can find me.
Awesome, Marcus. Well, thanks for coming on once again, and I'm sure we'll
Pleasure.
be in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. Pleasure to have been on.
All right.
Thank you.